I'm here to do my most surprising reads of the year. I normally wait to do these until I am at the end of the year, but I do have quite a few that I just wanted to share with you. Books that I went in with really no expectations, but really did surprise me. Surprisingly, a lot of them on this list is nonfiction, which I wasn't expecting. But I actually wound up really liking the nonfiction books I picked up this year. So let's dive into it. What I'm going to chat with you about is Anna Dressed in Blood by Kendra Blake. Book on so many TBRs, and I finally acquired a copy because my friend bought it for me. But I was really in the mood to read some eerie and creepy books, and this is the one that I picked up, and I went in with sort of no expectations. I loved it. I think some of the reasons I loved it, it was a male lead, a male main character. The the romantic element was not what I expected. It was definitely eerie and creepy and right up my alley. But I just loved Kaz as a main character, and I went in not really expecting I was gonna like him as a character so much, but I really did. It harkened me back. Oh my God, I sound so old. When I was reading Harry Potter and Percy Jackson, and just just those dynamics were very similar in this book, but it also gave me a supernatural element. I really loved it. I want to read Girl of Nightmares. I've always loved Kendra Blake stuff, but I've never read her black backlist before, so I'm intrigued to go pick up her older series as well. But this book, spot on for me. Focus on is a book in the Bridgerton series. Now, I am a big fan of the Bridgerton series, but I sort of figured when I was done with um, a certain book in the series, romancing Mr. Bridgerton, Colin, and Penelope's book, I would have not adored the series as much as I was as much as the previous books. But I was actually really wrong, and it's In His Kiss is adorable, and I really, really loved it. Even the last one, On the Way to the Wedding, was also really, really good. So these books really surprised me how much I enjoyed them, but I'll give you a photo of one. Since book, and I just really found the story to be cute. It had a quest element and a mystery element, and I really liked the romantic lead in this. Again, all her books are dual point of view, which I tend to enjoy, and these heroes are more my liking. I've read some recent stories which the heroes weren't my cup of tea, but this one I really like. But I also like the mystery element. I love the longer epilogues, and I just really loved Hyacinth as a character. Also, a little nod, I also really loved the Gregory and his love interest in the last book in the series. So delightful, just very, very fun. And I got to the point where I was like, oh my God, these books are so funny. I'm so upset that it took me so long to read them. It's a pretty big break between when I read the earlier ones in the series. But I really, really love this book, and I'm so happy that I picked it up. So Bridgerton is A-OK on my end. About is Max Einstein, The Genius Experiment. This is an ALA pick that I've had for so long, and I randomly picked it up, and I loved it. So here's a photo. Action adventure story, but a realistic action adventure story. I found that to be very, very refreshing. But you basically follow these group of kids who are geniuses, and they are sent out to solve problems. The problems are very, very realistic of what could be happening in our actual lives, and I found that to be really, really refreshing because when these characters go to solve these problems, it was realistic how they could solve them. Maybe a little bit in the future, maybe this might be happening a little bit in the future, but it was a very realistic story that I felt like kids could oh, I can do that, or I want to make that a reality. So it was approved by the Albert Einstein Foundation, I guess. It was approved. I thought this book was so funny and very, very delightful, very, very informative, very, very focused on STEAM. And I just really liked the main character. She was very, very fun as well. So definitely another book that put a smile on my face that I didn't necessarily expect. About is a memoir from Lin-Manuel Miranda, and it's Good Morning, Good Night. And I literally listened to this book 3 different times in a month. So that tells you it was surprising how much I enjoyed it. 5 minutes. But it basically sums up his Twitter feed. Every single morning he wakes you up with a motivational quote, and then he sort of says goodnight to you and with the same motivational quote kind of connected. So you just started reading them back to back to back. And I just thought it was very, very motivational to get me up in the morning. For those that don't know, I have to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning to get to my job. I have to take the train at 6. So sometimes in the morning I'm not as on the ball as I should be, but this week of listening to this audiobook was like very, very fun. I would definitely listen to it again. You could even like listen to like a little bit every single morning on your commute like I did, and I really found it refreshing. So I might have to reread it in 2022 and I'll keep you guys apprised. But very, very refreshing. I don't think I would have expected how much I enjoyed this, but also it's read by him. He has a very, very deeply soothing voice, so it was very, very nice on my commute. I really love the cozy mystery genre this year that I have included every single one I read on a different list. So the one I'm going to talk about today is Finley Donovan is Killing It. And I went in with all of these with super low expectations because I haven't loved cozy mysteries, which this is technically what it is, but these are just so delightful. So that's why this book made this list. And what I mean by that, like the cozy mystery genre, like of a Hannah Swanson or those books, I struggle with those books. So these are traditionally published. They're put in like a bigger house, like one's by Penguin, one's I think a lot of them are by Penguin or Berkeley Romance, and it's just a little bit of a different twist. And the characters are a lot more fleshed out. They're also a lot more diverse, and just more like interesting. They're just interesting stories. And this one I liked because it follows a young mom. She's a single mom. She's got divorced. She's working on a book. Her previous book was a bestseller, but she cannot get inspired. She's meeting with her agent and she's having this conversation with her agent, and they're talking about murder because she writes suspense, romantic suspense stories. And the person next to her assumes she's a hired hitman and hires her to kill her husband. And it was just such a fun story. I'm really excited for book two, but it just was fun. I mean, it also a heroine who was who wasn't in the best place of her life with kids and a divorce. It was fun. They always lead to romance, and I didn't spy any romance in this book that was like shaking out at me. At least that I can remember. It's been a bit since I read it, so maybe there was a romance that was like jumping me in the face and I just didn't see it, but I loved it. So I'm definitely going to check out book two, and that's why I made this list, because it just surprised me how much I was loving all the cozy mysteries I read this year outside of like the other, like the Hannah Swanson series that I've read. Because those books I sometimes struggle with. In these, I just kept expecting to be disappointed, and I just wasn't. The book that I picked up was a middle grade book, and it was a memoir written in verse. And I never read anything in verse. So right off the bat, I was really skeptical going into this book, but this book like touched my heart in so many ways. And here's a photo. So you basically follow this main character in Inside Out and Back Again, and this is like a memoir inspired either by her story or her grandmother's story. I think it might be her story. And she's basically gets sent to America, specifically to Atlanta, Georgia, I think. And it's just following her dealing with like racism and school pressures, all this stuff, family dynamics. It was a really hard read. There was some moments that just made me so angry, and there were some moments that just showed the beauty of what people could do, that just showed what this little girl went through from her path, from her house to this new location. And one of the quotes on the back of the book is, I would have preferred wartime in Saigon over peace in Georgia. And I just thought that that was like such a powerful quote. And when you read the book, it really becomes apparent. But I really loved it. I think I gave it 5 stars. It was a book that I want to read more nonfiction or like stories like this for middle grade audiences, because I really liked it. And I think I sometimes shy away from those books, but this one I really liked. So, but definitely why it's on this list. The book I'm going to chat about is another graphic novel for the middle grade set, and that is The Secret Garden of 81st Street, a modern retelling of The Secret Garden. And here is a pretty photo. It was just a very heartfelt story, and what Ivy Noel Weir is doing is she's sort of taking these classic stories and giving them a modern twist. I haven't read The Little Women yet, but this was my favorite movie when I was a little kid. This and The Little Princess. So I probably watched this movie like a million times when I was a kid. So just like the modern representation of the story and like how it was twisted and turned to fit a modern day. I also like that it dealt with like anxiety and depression and also grief as well in all of these characters, and also the developing of friendship. And it was sometimes a hard read. Like, it wasn't an easy read, but I think it took the spirit of the Secret Garden story and sort of turned it on its head. The friendship elements were so cute, and I think all the characters really had like a role to play, and it made me very emotional towards the end, which I think is sort of the point, but it just put a smile on my face. And I didn't go in expecting to be that emotionally connected to the characters, but I definitely was, and that just made me super happy. So that is why it's on this list. The book I'm going to chat about in this video, I have one more nonfiction, is Fresh by Margaret Wood, and here's a photo. At Epic Reads, and now she works at a couple of different companies, but she did it to become a published author. So this is a new adult version of Emma Woodhouse, and I could not stop laughing at this book. I thought it was so funny, so well, so like just so ingenious. And I went in super skeptical because I don't love new adult. New adult is not a genre I've ever been interested in reading, but Margaret Wood is such a funny writer, and a lot of the elements, like, she was telling you the story and she kept calling you out and she kept on having anecdotes in the book. I like the structure, how the story was told so well, and I think it just added to the fun and the moment, like the moments where I felt like I was in the story. It was so charming. She has such a unique voice, and I really felt like I was hearing about like a person that I knew, and Margaret just did that so well. So that's why it's on this list. I don't never read new adult, and that's why sort of I went in with like lower expectations. I got it in a PR box, but I really loved it, and I'm so excited to see what she's working on next because I will definitely be checking it out. And the last book that I am going to chat about is Good Morning, Good Life, and it is a book, like a self-help book that sort of helps you revamp your morning routine. This like blew my morning routine out of the water, and I learned so much from this book. I'm still trying to piece it together during the actual school year. Over the summer, I have such a good morning routine, but I just like run out of time. So I'm still taking all of these moments and trying to piece them together in my life. But this book was a huge help this past year, which I'm really grateful for. And here's the photo. Me working from home for about a year. I mean, kind of throughout all the pandemic and kind of going back to work and then getting sent back home. But once I was back in school, like full time, it was really hard to get used to waking up, and I felt like I was always so exhausted. So I really made this like a mission to sort of figure out my morning routine and also my evening routine. And by the time I finished this book, it was in the middle of the summer, so I had really got a really good summer routine going, and I really love my summer routine, but my school routine I'm still sort of working on. I'm going to kind of play with it a little bit more, but this book was very eye-opening on how to make sure my morning routine feeds in my day and it doesn't like restrict my day. So I'm still working on it, but that is why this book was really, really eye-opening. Another book that was super eye-opening was The Life Tidying Magic of Tidying Up by Marie Kondo. I know people are really critical of that book, but the way when I read it, I always just take what is helpful for me and don't include the stuff that's not helpful for me. Honestly, like just looking behind me, I have more than 30 books, but books make me happy. When I look at my books on my shelves, those make me happy. So I feel like her like aesthetic and her life coaching is really helpful, and I just happen to be happy by having 600 books in my bedroom. That may not make a lot of people happy, but it definitely makes me happy. So those are the books that just surprised me this year. Some of them were nonfiction, some of them were middle grade, and just an assortment of books that I went in with sort of no expectations and really did impress me. Let me know in the comments what are some books that impressed you or surprised you, and I'll talk to you guys for my next BookMas video. Bye, friends.